Okay, welcome to the second lecture on project management and team working. I can see quite a few teams are getting together. We'll have a look at those in a minute. Anyone recognise the music?
Great Escape.
What?
Great Escape.
The Great Escape. Someone likes old films, then. Great. Yes, it is indeed The Great Escape. And when I was about your age, not so long ago, I used to watch movies on Christmas time, because Christmas time was a time when they brought in all the best movies and they put them on the TV and showed them over Christmas. And it was kind of a running joke that there was one film which they showed almost every single year that came up. Christmas time, Christmas Day, all that kind of thing. And it was this one. It was The Great Escape, complete with a range of stars like Edinburgh and Steve McQueen and all these other people as well. And the reason why this is significant to you today is not because I'm recommending old movies to you, because actually it's a good one, and I would recommend you watching that one if you've get some time free. It's a nice movie, but it's a movie not just about a Great Escape. It's a movie about a project. And it's a movie about a project team. And this, in fact, is the team which engineered one of the most daring escapes in World War II from one of the camps. This was the actual diagram of what they did. They're all based in hut number 1, or one of the many huts there, and they decided they were going to dig a tunnel. In fact, they didn't just dig one tunnel, they dig 3 tunnels. They call them Tom, Dick and Harry. And they had to organise all the people in order to do this. They sort of dug down about 20 feet or more, and they put that under the gas stove because they thought that no one's going to look under the gas stove, and they had a chance way of moving it. So they went down there, and then down below they built this kind of area where they can, it's quite elaborate, in fact hugely elaborate, because they had railway tracks. I'm not sure where they got the railway tracks from. Maybe they put them together somehow on rails so that you could pull people through underneath the ground. They had an air vent system, which they had a guy working like that, and all that worked out. And they had a dispersal of all the stuff which they made. It was a big project for them to do. And they had a whole team of people who didn't have much else to do except think about how to escape. And they had to go through quite a long distance, as you can see. There's the people they had were people who had to dig tunnels, people who had to organise things. Then there was once they got out, they had to plan how they're going to escape from there too. Whether they had the right clothes, civilian clothes, how they could forge documents, all that kind of stuff was all planned and carefully worked out. And this is not just a story for the Christmas time. It was actually a real story. It really happened. They really did this kind of escape. It was called the Great Escape because they got rid of, I don't know how many, 100 people all in one go. Which, the next day when the German authorities turned up to do the roll call, and half of them were missing, it was a massive, massive blow because they got them all out through this tunnel system. It's an amazing feat and the biggest escape that took place in Germany. This is the team that they had. Yeah, people playing different roles. There's a guy in the top right-hand corner there, Danny the Tunnel King, who was doing all the digging and often had the tunnels fall on him. There was Hiltz the American, who was creative idea. There was a guy here who was the leader. There's Donald Pleasance there, who was the forger. All kinds of stuff they had. Well, they're a team then, and we'll be pulling on their experience as we go through this morning. But you also have teams. You have teams that you're working on, and already I can see the teams forming up. I don't know if you can see that there. This is what I see. There are 14 teams in total, and some of them are pretty well complete. Team number 1, 9 out of 9, so you're doing well. Team number 1 is here. And also we've got team 3, it's got 9 people, team 7, team 11, team 13, we've all got 9, so we've got some complete teams. We've also got some which are almost there. There's team 2 with 7, team 4 with 7, there's some with 6 and 8, and so on. And there's some smaller teams which is good. I mean, it's good to start off, even though you've only got 3 or 4. There's one very enterprising person, whoever it is, in Team 9, who's decided to be a team, at least start the team off with himself or herself, whoever that may be. So, some energetic person making a start. So, we're getting there. All of you should fit into 14 teams or so, Brightspace manages it. And then those teams need to be fixed and formulated by the 13th. You recognise that the 13th is Monday, and if you haven't got yourself into a team by Monday or made up your team by Monday, then by the magic of Brightspace group allocation, it will automatically, through some mysterious algorithm, take odd people and shove them into teams wherever you happen to be, even if it's at random, and it will be at random. So, best always to choose your teammates rather than just have someone foisted on you at random, which is what the system will do. So you have between now and Monday to get your team sorted out. So if you've only got 8 or 6 or 1, you need to recruit the rest, okay? And you might say, how do I do that? Well, you can contact your fellow possible teammates. And the best way to do that is to go on Brightspace, go onto the discussion area, which I don't think anyone's used yet, and simply advertise your team. Say what kind of project you want to do, what kind of app you want to make, say what kind of score you expect to get, what kind of level of commitment you're looking for. We have a high energy team. We are aiming for a first class in this area, and we're looking for someone who can do the business side or a spreadsheet on cash flow, that kind of thing. So put your advert in there, and I mentioned to you last week, if you get more than one applicant, interview. Get the best one you can. You don't want to get someone who's just lukewarm or not that interested. So at the moment, all the teams are allocated to, or getting allocated to particular seminars, because I'd like you to work together as your team. We can fit 2 teams into one seminar. So what I'd like you to do, because the seminars are set up in such a way that it's kind of teamwork, it doesn't make any sense to have individuals coming to seminars because all the tasks are getting you to do some team activities. Yeah? So rearrange your seminars and then run them in such a way that you bring your team or most of your team along and then do the activities together. The advantage to you in doing that is because the activities which I've set up for the seminars will actually help you to do your assignment, because it gets you to do a task, and that task will enable you to add something new into your project plan or something of that nature. So it's not wasted time in seminars. It's getting your team together, getting a chance to discuss, and creating something which will go into your assignment as well. So come on to those ones. You can see that many of them are filled up already. There's actually, although we've got 9 slots here with 2 in each one, we don't need 9. If you've got 14 teams, you can work out that you could get those, if you've got 2 of them, into just 7 slots, which would be sensible, and then we wouldn't have to go to a whole range of seminars where nothing much is happening. There is no seminar on Friday for that reason, because Friday afternoon tends to be a dead kind of time when people have gone, so we're going to leave that one out. And also there's 2 seminar slots here, which I only want to use if absolutely bang on necessary, because they're in a graveyard slot of 5 o'clock till 6 o'clock, which, well, let's be frank, nobody really wants to be around between 5 o'clock and 6 o'clock of an afternoon. You've got better things to do. Maybe we have too. So if you can put your group into one of these remaining slots, remember there's only space for 2 groups for each one. There's a couple, there's some free on Thursday, there's one free on Tuesday. No, we're nearly there. Pretty well nearly there. So just a couple of groups to tidy up. Please sign up to that by the end of this week. Maybe do it by today if you can. You can do it now while you've got a phone or something and tie it up. If you don't, then what will happen is you'll be allocated reasonably at random to one of those slots, which, well, give yourself a choice at least, rather than have it dictated. So, we're on course, and we're doing okay for our project team setup. Now, today's lecture, I'm going to tell you, because I've warned you already, that the hardest job that you will have in this unit is not understanding what I'm saying or what Paul de Vries is saying in lectures. The hardest job you will have is managing your team. Really, really, human beings are the biggest nuisance, particularly if you find that you come across people who you don't get on with, or people who don't seem to think sensibly like you do. Then, you know, it causes friction, it causes problems, and that will be your biggest difficulty. It's also going to be a big difficulty for you to manage a team of 9. As I say, it's easier for you to manage just a couple of mates, maybe 2 or 3 of you. Maybe you go down a pub or a coffee house or somewhere, you meet there quite regularly after hours. It's easy to get on with people that you know and you've made friends with. But suddenly you've got a group of people, and some of them you don't know. Very few people have a group of 9 friends. So normally you have 1, 2, maybe 3 at most, kind of thing. But I've known people who have group friends of 4 when they go around together. But teams of 9 are just unheard of. So you've got to work with people you don't really know. And that's going to be a difficult, that's going to be a challenge. And in fact, trying to get everybody, the best of everybody, is going to be your biggest nightmare. But today, I am going to give you some tools and some wise advice gathered over many years on how to manage your team, how to look out for time wasters, how to stop them from sabotaging your group early on, how to keep everything on track. And if you take this advice carefully, you'll be able to be up and running with your team and know what all the pitfalls are that are coming shortly. So, let's have a look at that. We're going to look at, first of all, the first half. What is a team? The team roles, the Belbin team model, that some of you may have heard of, how different roles play an important part in teams. Then we're going to have a break around about the hour, 10 o'clock. And then we're going to come back and I'm going to share with you some real practical things that you need to do to pull your team together and make it function. Real formal tools. All right. Let's begin. So, you can't really talk about teams or groups and things unless you really know what you're talking about and want us all to be on the same page with that. So, just to get our terminology right, we often use the word team or the word group interchangeably as if they mean the same thing, but they don't actually mean the same thing. There's a technical difference between them. And the technical difference is that a group is just any collection of people you like which doesn't have any particular aim. You might have a group of people who just go down the pub, they're not interested in anything particular. But a team is a group of people plus a purpose or a goal working towards a particular outcome. So you're not a team unless you've got a shared goal. Well, you've got a shared goal, because I've given you one called assignment, and it's got 1,000 marks for you to gather in as the total marks, and you're going to try and maximise your number of marks for that. That's the aim. Okay, there are different types of teams, groups plus a shared goal. There are formal teams and there are informal teams. There are permanent teams and there are temporary teams. And you may be part of one or two of these kind of teams. For example, informal teams, things which are not organised by work. There's no professional responsibility there. You can join in, but there's a badminton team. That's a permanent team because it runs from season to season. Or there's an amateur dramatic production, which is a temporary team, where you're just putting on a play for this moment and you've got the team together who's going to do it. So that's an informal kind of thing. But with formal teams, usually to do with your workplace, then there are more different kinds of teams for that. So an IT department, go on in the university here, they're permanent, they're there all the time. You can call on them whenever you like, this year, next year, whatever. But the team that you are, of course, is in the temporary formal area, which is called the project team. And that's where you sit. You're temporary because you finish at the end of, I think it's May the 13th. That's when the team closes down. And you are formal though, because it's set up for a particular professional purpose. Now, you're getting your team together. You've got 9 people in it. And you need to make sure you're going to be successful. You want the highest possible mark. You can get a maximum of 100%. You can get a minimum, well, if you want to pass, of 40%. And you want to be somewhere within that gauge there. How do you make yourself a successful team? I'm going to take you through the steps for doing that today. If you pay close attention to what I say, if you give me your reasonably undivided attention for just an hour or so, I will make you a very successful team, because I will share with you all the tips that you need to know to make it actually work. I'm going to go through some of these things here. Clear goals, good internal communication, agreed structure. I'm going to show you how you do those things, not just talk about them like that, but how you actually do them. And it starts off with recognizing that different members of a team have different capabilities, different attitudes, different personalities, different approaches. Each of you brings to the team something unique, something which only you can add to that team. You have a special role, in other words. And there are team roles, and each of you will have a different team role within your team. And you'll be trying to find out what that role is right at this moment, because you're not too sure what role you're going to play. You'd like to have a particular role. Maybe some of you want to be in charge of the team, and you might be jockeying with someone else for being in charge of the team. Or maybe you just want to be a team worker, because you're very good at making everything pull together. Yeah, but you're working out what your role is in the team, because you're not just one individual anymore. You've got to see, where do I fit in? And we're going to look at team roles. Now, there's a guy called Belbin. And Belbin studied this whole idea of team roles. And he asked himself a central question. He said, what combination of individual members' psychological, that's interesting, psychological traits, your internal makeup, your attitude, your disposition, your personality. What kind of personalities and attitudes make up a successful team? And he did an interesting job of trying to isolate what he considered to be the 9 most important roles within a team. So he had this team role concept. He reckoned that people played a different role. You needed to find out what those roles were. So he said there were 9 of them, according to his model. Now, I don't want to tell you that this role here, this role model of 9, is the perfect model. It's not, it's just someone's idea. But it makes you think about it. There are other people with other models, which may have more roles or fewer roles. But this is just one of the most famous ones. And I don't want to go through all the different ones. It wouldn't serve you any helpful ideas to do that. It just sets you up to make you think. And this is the question I want you to ask yourself throughout my lecture this morning, is what is my role? Okay, so when I go through these, think of some of these, whether they fit with you or not. Let's have a look at some of it. So, he said that each role has got a defining characteristic, each role has got a weakness to it, and each role has got an unacceptable behaviour too, which we'll look at and see how that works. And when you're in a role in a team, you tend to think, oh, well, they're in charge, so they're higher up, and I'm only doing this, so I'm not very important in my team. Not true, said Belbin. All the roles are important, because if one role doesn't function, the whole thing falls down. So everyone's role is important, even the person who thinks that they're the lowest in the team. There aren't any good roles, there aren't any better roles, there are just different roles. That was the point that Belbin was making. And he said that the best and most efficient teams, this is his conclusion, are made up by combining a balanced mix of roles. If you've got a whole team just full of leaders, it's not going to work. They're all going to pull apart, okay? If you've got people without any leadership, then it's not going to work either. You need a balance here. And when you construct your team, although it might be too late for some of you, you need to think of this mix of roles. Have we got someone who can do this? Have we got someone who can do that? What roles did he identify? Well, these 9 roles, he called them by these names here. The creative role, the resource investigator role, the coordinator role, the driver or the motivator role, the team worker, the implementer, the completer finisher, and the specialist. You need one of each of these. And it's no coincidence, really, that I've chosen for you a team of 9. Because 9 matches this. So if you can get sort of an approximation to that, or as close a match as you can get, you've probably got a very good balanced team. If you only had a team of 3 or 4, you probably wouldn't do so well. Let's look at these in more detail. So, the creative role, and I can match these to the kind of roles that you saw in the Great Escape. The creative role, that was really taken by a guy called Hiltz. He was Stephen Queen. It's an innovative role. He was outside the box. He was doing things on his own, something different. He made his own escape plan, in actual fact. He was imaginative. He solved problems that other people couldn't. And he could ride a good motorbike as well. If you see the end of the film, it was pretty good. The second role was a guy called, I forget his name now. He's the resource investigator. He was called the scrounger. He would get all the materials together. So if you needed some wooden boards to shore up the tunnel, then he was the man to do that. And you need someone who is communicative, has got good networks outside of the team, someone who knows what the programs are that you need to use, the software, maybe the GitHub libraries, all that kind of things. Get some resources together, and maybe a bit of an extrovert to make your links with that. The next one was the coordinator. This guy, Richard Attenborough, brother of David Attenborough, who I'm no doubt you've heard of, was called Big X in the movie. He was the coordinator. Nothing can be done without Big X's say-so. So he clarified the goals, he made the decision-making at the end of the day and promoted all of that. In addition to that, you need someone who is a kind of motivator and someone who can keep the team going and can see solutions to problems and get people to drive on. This was McDonald. He was intelligence. He was challenging, dynamic. He overcame obstacles. So it requires a bit of intelligence for that one. Ian McCallum, those who watched Man from Uncle, he was Emilia Kuryakin. In this film, he was dispersal. He used to get rid of all the dirt, so he meant if you're digging out a tunnel, how do you get rid of that? And he was monitoring the whole situation, making sure that everything flowed properly, and monitor what's going on. There was the mole. He's basically a team worker. And the team worker seems to be someone who doesn't do very much. But actually the team worker is one of the most important members of your team because they smooth over problems. They get things done. If there's an issue within the team where one side is against another, he can smooth all that over, or she can smooth all that over. They listen, they build, they avoid friction. They keep the team together. The implementer or the surveyor, someone who is reasonably efficient, but can turn ideas, just ideas, creative ideas, maybe from the creative person, into practical things, implementing stuff. You may need that if you're a programmer, for example. And then we had the Tunnel King, Danny, the Tunnel Charles Bronson, completer, finisher, the one who actually gets in, does all the work, and tidies up at the end and gets everything signed off and completed. Gets rid of all the errors, the omissions, makes sure everything's finished on time. And then finally, the last one, Donald Pleasance here, he was the specialist. His expertise was in forgery, so he made all the passports for all of the teams as they were escaping, and drew out and made did all the engraving for that. And you may have a special technical issue with your team. Do you have someone with that technical expertise? Because you may well need that. If you need someone to do app programming, you'll need that expertise. So, there are the team roles from a Great Escape point of view. Now, what I want you to do for the next 5 minutes is to think to yourself which role best suits me. Okay, so I'd like you to focus your attention. I'm just going to go through those roles again, give you a bit more detail on them. And as I go through them and flip through the 9 roles, I want you to be thinking on each of them, is that a description of me, or is that not me? Okay? Now you may come up at the end of this with not just one role that fits you, but maybe 2 or even 3 roles which fit you, and you think I could fit into one of those roles. So have a look. Are you the creative sort? Are you just bubbling up with all kinds of ideas? Are you the kind of person who maybe you don't have to think through all the logic of it, but you can generate new ideas here, there, and everywhere, because that's a very important role within your team. You know, unorthodox generators of ideas, bright, free-thinking, tend to ignore incidentals, don't get bogged down in detail, but you can generate whole new approaches to things if you want to. The question here then is, do you fit into that group? Are you a creative person? I know you've got probably a very interesting conversation going on somewhere in the middle there. Excuse me. I know you've got a very interesting, but I find it personally distracting. You know, I don't know if you would know that, but I find it distracting when I hear you sort of talking together. I would very much like either to just pay attention, or if you really need to have your conversation, I really don't mind if you just want to go out and have that conversation elsewhere. That would be fine by me, but I'm sure others may find it distracting too. So either way, if you want to stay and listen, that's great. If you want to go and have a conversation, that's great too. Thanks. So, that's the creative one. Are you the kind of person who knows the field? You know, if you're going to do some programming, if you're going to do, do you know the resources that you need? You're going to say, we don't need that program, we don't need that software, what we do need is this. Have you seen this before? No. Well, this is what we're going to be using, because this is really the best solution to the problem. Are you a kind of research-focused person who knows where to find the right kind of materials, the right kind of information, the right kind of stuff which you can feed into the team? Because if you're a knowledgeable person and can make contact with maybe others if you need to find out information, then you might be a resource investigator. That might be your role. Have a think about that, because that could be central to you. I often think that a lot of people think, this is me. I'm good at coordinating. I could lead things rather well. If I was in charge of the group, it would go straight this way. And you might be right. I tend to think, though, that people who think that way They're either completely right or completely wrong. But the only persons who can tell you whether you really are a good coordinator is actually the rest of the team. Because if you are going to be a good coordinator, by which I mean like the project leader of your team, people will recognise that in you automatically. You'll have that kind of air about you where people look to you. When you're in a conversation, you know, people look to you, to what you say, because they know that you're going to say something sensible, clear, precise, and cut to the heart of the problem. If you're not that kind of person who automatically attracts that kind of attention, or is the centre of things, because people listen to you, then you might not have this role really for you. But you might be that kind of person. I would say it's fairly rare to find an automatic kind of coordinator. But they're confident, stable, mature. You can depend upon what they say, and you can rely on them. And they deliver what they say they're going to deliver. So really important to be that kind of person. Clarifying decisions, someone who is kind of like the backstop. Are you that kind of person? Think about it. Maybe you're just a motivator. When I say just a motivator, what I mean is, this is a very important role. The team flag a little bit, some people get angry, some people get upset with other people, some people don't care. Can you get them motivated? Are you really fired up by the project yourself and say, look, we really need to get this done, we can do it, all we need is this, this and this. And can you get other people on board? And do you have that kind of encouraging zeal about you which can motivate other people to get moving and do things? Some people have that automatically as part of their personality, that they can encourage other people. And that would be great. If you're that kind of person, then you may well be the motivator of your team. You keep it going, you keep it on schedule, and you say, come on, man, let's move this on because we're spending too much time on this. We need to keep it motoring. Are you a motivator? Are you good at attention to detail? You know, do you notice when things are just not quite right, they don't fit properly? That needs changing, that needs improving, that needs putting right in some way or other. The monitor evaluator is someone who checks things as they go along and makes sure it's all going ahead. And they can see the various options that you're taking, and they make sure it goes in the right direction. Tends to be a slow person, but very analytical. Tends to be someone who thinks through details quite a bit, but always comes to the right decision at the end, even though it may take some time. Now, you need people like that in your group, and it may be that you are that kind of person. Is that you? Someone who pays attention to detail, takes your time about things, analyses it carefully, and then proceeds to the next step. Think about whether you're in that role. The team worker. Are you a good diplomat? Are you somebody who can get people working together? Now, that's a special task, to be able to get everyone involved. Do you notice when someone is sort of sitting out and feeling a bit left out in the team, and can you encourage them to be joined in? Can you, when two people sort of butt heads together a little bit and being a bit argumentative, are you able to sort of calm things down and smooth things over? Can you oil the wheels of the machinery? Can you bring the team together so the whole team is functioning? Can you play that role? That's a very important role to do. Smoothing over conflicts. That might be you. You might be exactly that kind of person. Is that your role? Implementer. Someone who will take an idea and turn it into a practical thing. You know, what we need is a database. Next week, here's a database. It's all been done, you know, exactly according to spec. I can create that for you. You can implement things. They'll always be relied on to deliver on time. There's lots of people you'll find who can't deliver on time, who each week goes by and they haven't done it. But the implementer gets it done. So is it someone who has high standards, someone who has a good discipline, internal discipline, knows deadlines, meets deadlines, keeps that? By the way, I found in my experience that if you want a job somewhere out in the big wide world, you get a job. I think the most important soft skill that you can have as far as an employer is concerned is, are you reliable? If you say you're going to do something, do you do it? Are you always there at 9:30 in the morning or whenever the day starts? Are you always delivering on time? Do you always meet the deadlines? Can you be 100% relied upon? Because that is one of the most important skills. The people who get rid of most quickly in any organisation are those who don't turn up on time, don't deliver on time, and cannot be trusted to do what they say they're going to do. Okay? An implementer is someone who does that. A finisher is someone who is a bit of a perfectionist. Are you a perfectionist? Do you like to make sure that everything is really tied up properly? You make sure everything is just right? You're not happy with second-hand quality, shoddy goods. You're not interested in someone who produces a half-baked kind of bit of code and you're wanting to send that back and say, look, that just needs extra work on it. That interface, it looks so jagged, everything's out of line, it doesn't work properly, it just looks awful. Do you have that kind of eye for detail that makes you want to finish it off and do it properly? That might be you. You might be the finisher. And lastly, do you have specialist skills? Usually passionate about your own field. Maybe you've made 100 apps yourself and already loaded them up onto a Google Play or something. Maybe you've gained those skills outside of the university. Maybe you've got them home because you're a game specialist in some field, and if that's part of your project, that may be your specialism which is just needed for that. Do you have a specialism which you can bring to the project, in which case you may well be a specialist? Okay, so you've had to think now about 9 roles, some of which may be exactly describing you, some of which may partially describe you, and some of which will be irrelevant. That's not me. So those are the kind of people, and you are part of that, who need to be involved in your team. I'm now going to tell you about 5 people who you do not want to be part of your team, and then we'll have a break. So let me introduce you to 5 characters who many of you will meet in your team. The 5 people you least want to have in your team. Watch out for them. Here's the first one. The invisible man. Or the invisible woman. These are the people who say, yeah, I'll be there. Whatever. Whatever's a good phrase for the invisible man, I think. Usually means don't depend on it, And when you say you're going to be there, they're not. You can't see them. They're not around. They don't appear. 2 or 3 members of your team never turn up. And they're on the list, and you email them. And they email back and say, yeah, I was busy that day, but next time I'm going to be there, And you know that it's not going to be true anyway. They just don't bother turning up. They're totally disconnected. That's the invisible man person for you. You may well find someone like that on your team. Do not put up with that, otherwise your team will be severely weakened by that. What do? If you've got an invisible man on your team, how do you deal with that? Well, you would talk to them as a team and put pressure on them first of all and say, we've all got to pull together here. And if that doesn't work, the very last resort that you've got is you can appeal to me. What will I do? Well, I can talk to them as well, but I can't ultimately force them to do any work. But I can make them accountable for their own work. How do I do that? I'll just split them off the team. I'll say, okay, team won't have you anymore. You do a project on your own. Now, I appreciate you can't do the work of 9 people. I'm not asking you to do that. Just do one aspect of it, and I'll mark that. Now, people don't like that idea of having to be totally accountable for himself, not the invisible man anyway. He wants to sit in on your team and gain all of your marks. To be pushed out and then told that I'm on my own, I've got to, I stand or fall by what I produce, that's not desirable. So you have that kind of lever that can be used. And I have used that lever in times gone by when it's clear that someone is just not pulling their weight. And I will use that lever again if the team itself is convinced that they've tried every avenue and that person is not contributing. So bear that in mind. That's something you can do. The second person you do not want to meet is the silent partner. Now, this is the person who will show up to all the meetings. They're not invisible by any means. They're going to be there. But they sit in the corner and they don't really get engaged in the conversation. The way you recognise them is very easy, because while you're busy trying to work something out in your project, they're over there on their mobile phone, texting away, and they're not listening to what's being said. You say, what do you think, Jude? What? Yeah, you go ahead and do it, that's fine with me. Totally disengaged, not interested, a bit bored with the whole thing, really. You know, just leave me alone a little bit, and you get on and do it. I'll support whatever you're doing, that's great, but you know, don't ask me to do anything really serious. That's the kind of silent partner. Now, you may find someone like that in your team, and if you do, then you have to bring them in. And there are techniques to doing that. Lecturers use it all the time. You know, if there's someone who, if you've got a small group and someone doesn't pay much attention, you just say, what do you think? You know, point out, go around the whole group, get everyone's views, get everyone's buy-in, and also make sure that tasks are allocated so that that person has a specific thing to do for next week. Don't allow people to have a free ride on your group. There's the procrastinator. Procrastination. Putting things off, never doing it, never getting round to it. Yeah, I'll do that next week, that's no problem. Next week comes, well, you know, I made a start, you know, it's good. But next week comes after that, yeah, I'm making progress, yeah. Next week comes again after that, well, I'm getting there. Never comes, never there. You know, what you really need to do, though, is have some strong discipline in that. You need strict deadlines, you need accountability. Show me what you have done so far. You know, don't ever let anyone get away with the fact that they turn up next week and say, oh, well, you know, I've only done half of it, not worth showing. No, well, show us what you've done. Always get people to show what they have done. If you've given them a task the previous week, and even if it's only half complete, it's important to bring some accountability to that task. Number 4, the overpromiser, under-deliverer. A bit related to the last one in a way, but these are the people who will say that they can do the world for you. I can do that. I can create that database. I can create that app. I can do the interface. I can do all of that. No problem. Yeah, leave it to me. And although they've got, you know, genuine ambitions to do all kinds of stuff, there's a lot of distractions around. Well, you know, I've been out most weeks, most nights, and didn't get around to doing it. Never come up with the goods. So again, you have the same kind of thing. Make sure everyone's given a task. Don't just jump to the person who's volunteering the loudest. Make sure that they are delivering what they can say that they can deliver. I've known projects to founder because a crucial bit was needed by everybody and was never delivered, ever. Never turned up, despite all the promises and all the great, you know, hype that was said about it. Never turned up. Watch out for people who will overpromise and underdeliver. Again, you don't want to meet people like that. And finally, you may come across this person. This is a kind of a control freak person who doesn't trust anybody to do the job properly. That's a kind of mindset, this. You're only going to work as a team properly if everybody has their own responsibility, everyone pulls their weight, everyone does their thing. But there's one person maybe in your team who doesn't trust you to do it properly. They don't trust you to do a decent job because you don't do it the same way that they would do it. And therefore, they try and muscle in all the time. They're trying to take on too much. They're trying to take over everybody's role and work, trying to do it all for themselves because they're not happy with anyone else's standards. They tend to think they've got very, very high standards, and they may have very, very high standards. The standards you may need to get a distinction or a first class may actually be this high, and their standards may be that high. And then you are never going to be good enough for that. And if you meet a person like that, they never are happy with what you're doing, and they often want to do it for themselves. No, I'll do that, don't worry about it. And then when they take on too much, the whole thing fails because you can't take on 9 people's work and not, collapse under the strain. So 5 people you don't want to meet, and 9 people that you do. And pulling all that together and making your team work is going to be the hardest job you'll do. We're going to have a breakdown. We're going to break until 10:10, and then I'm going to show you a range of tools that you can use to make your team function. Right.